Monks, there are these two kinds of search, the noble search and the ignoble search. And what is the ignoble search? Here someone being himself subject to birth seeks what is also subject to birth. Being himself subject to aging, he seeks what is also subject to aging. Being himself subject to sickness, he seeks what is also subject to sickness. Being himself subject to death, he seeks what is also subject to death. Being himself subject to sorrow, he seeks what is also subject to sorrow. Being himself subject to defilement, he seeks what is also subject to defilement. And what may be said to be subject to birth? Wife and children are subject to birth. Men and women slaves, goats and sheep, fowl and pigs, elephants, cattle, horses and mares, gold and silver are subject to birth. Gold and silver means money, are subject to birth. These objects of attachment are subject to birth, and one who is tied to these things, infatuated with them, and utterly committed to them, being himself subject to birth, seeks what is also subject to birth. And what may be said to be subject to aging? Wife and children are subject to aging. Men and women slaves, goats and sheep, fowl and pigs, elephants, cattle, horses and mares, gold and silver are subject to aging. These objects of attachment are subject to aging. And one who is tied to these things, infatuated with them, and utterly committed to them, being himself subject to aging, seeks what is also subject to aging. And what may be said to be subject to sickness? Wife and children are subject to sickness, men and women slaves, goats and sheep, fowl and pigs, elephants, cattle, horses and mares are subject to sickness. These objects of attachment are subject to sickness, and one who is tied to these things, infatuated with them, and utterly committed to them, being himself subject to sickness, seeks what is also subject to sickness. And what may be said to be subject to death? Wife and children are subject to death. Men and women slaves, goats and sheep, fowl and pigs, elephants, cattle, horses and mares are subject to death. These objects of attachment are subject to death, and one who is tied to these things, infatuated with them, and utterly committed to them, being himself subject to death, seeks what is also subject to death. And what may be said to be subject to sorrow? Wife and children are subject to sorrow. Men and women slaves, goats and sheep, fowl and pigs, elephants, cattle, horses and mares are subject to sorrow. These objects of attachment are subject to sorrow. And one who is tied to these things, infatuated with them, and utterly committed to them, being himself subject to sorrow, seeks what is also subject to sorrow. And what may be said to be subject to defilement? Wife and children are subject to defilement. Men and women slaves, goats and sheep, fowl and pigs, elephants, cattle, horses and mares, gold and silver are subject to defilement. These objects of attachment are subject to defilement, and one who is tied to these things, infatuated with them and utterly committed to them, being himself subject to defilement, seeks what is also subject to defilement. This is the ignoble search. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is saying that a person who seeks after worldly things, the normal things that a lay person looks for, wife and children, property, money, and all this are all subject to birth, aging, sickness, death, sorrow, and defilement. And what is a noble search? Here someone, being himself subject to birth, having understood the danger in what is subject to birth, seeks the unborn supreme security from bondage, nibbana. Being himself subject to aging, having understood the danger in what is subject to aging, he seeks the unaging supreme security from bondage, nibbana. Being himself subject to sickness, having understood the danger in what is subject to sickness, he seeks the unailing supreme security from bondage, nibbana. Being himself subject to death, having understood the danger in what is subject to death, he seeks this deathless supreme security from bondage, nibbana. being himself subject to sorrow, having understood the danger in what is subject to sorrow, he seeks the sorrowless supreme security from bondage, nibbana. Being himself subject to defilement, having understood the danger in what is subject to defilement, he seeks the undefiled supreme security from bondage, nibbana. This is the noble search. So here the Buddha says the noble or Aryan search is the search for nibbana. If a person understands the Dhamma, that all worldly things are subject to aging, sickness, death, sorrow, defilement, then he will let go of these things and look for a way out of all these worldly things and look for the supreme security from bondage, which is nibbana.